Wrestling Podcast.
Welcome back to the European Wrestling Podcast. Today we have a new guest and he's a guy from Scotland, talking about Tom Fulton. He's from Scotland but now lives in Romania, where he's a wrestler, trainer and promoter. Thanks everybody for listening the past episodes. I really enjoy doing this podcast. It was a project that I had for a long time. Wasn't sure about it, but then I started out last year with a couple of episodes and they went pretty well. And then let's keep doing it. For everybody, if you have any question, you can contact me on my Facebook page, or you can just write a question using the hashtag European Wrestling Podcast on any social media. I'll catch you. And so let's do another episode. Are you ready? Let's do it.
European Wrestling Podcast.
Hi, Tom Fulton. Welcome to the European Wrestling Podcast. It's a pleasure to have you here. How you doing today, man?
Oh, I'm good. Thanks for having me. Got a bit of a cold, so if I sound a bit funny, that's why.
Well, but you know, things happen, and you're a hard worker guy, always busy. I had the pleasure to work with you and for you and in Romania a couple of months ago, and you seems very busy in your everyday life, so you know you don't have time to rest.
No, there's no time to get sick, no.
So today I would like to talk about your career, but before going in, how did you get trained and everything? How did you fell in love with professional wrestling? Any memory since you were a kid, or any specific memory? Maybe a match that you saw, or something on TV or live event?
Yeah, well, it was kind of it started when I was really young. I was maybe like 5 years old, 6 years old. So it was very early 90s. So it was like 1991. My brothers were much older than me, so I was 5 or 6 years old, and they were talking about wrestling. I had no idea what they were talking about, and I was hearing these crazy stories of like earthquake breaking Hulk Hogan's ribs, and Hogan was gone for months. I had no idea who these people were. I was just hearing the stories. You know, like Shawn Michaels throwing Marty Jannetty through the barbershop window. Again, I had no frame of reference. I didn't know who these people were. And finally, it was through unfortunate circumstances. My grandfather, he had a stroke and then a heart attack, and he had to retire from his job. And when he did that, the payout that he got, he had to invest the money in something. So he got a satellite television, which was very rare at the time, and it was the only way that you could see WWF programming. So once they had satellite, we used to go down every weekend and watch wrestling every weekend. My gran loved it, so I used to sit and watch wrestling with my gran every weekend. She found old tapes of World of Sport wrestling, so we'd watch the old British wrestling, the newer American wrestling, and yeah, I was hooked from the age of maybe 5, 6 years old. I watched religiously until I was till about 2000. I got really sick of wrestling around 2000. It just become too much.
So anytime we speak about early days of life of my guest, I always forget to specify something. Because, you know, every single country had different, or still have different TV deal. Some people is able to watch stuff, some people is not. So where did you grow up? So Scotland, what part of Scotland?
Yeah. So I grew up in Fife on the east coast of Scotland. And over there, the only way to see any wrestling, the British wrestling had kind of been cancelled on TV. It wasn't available anymore. The only way to see wrestling was to see the WWF on satellite TV. And that wasn't really an option for most people. So my gran used to tape it all, and we'd go over and try and watch as much live as we could, and then we would watch the tapes that she would make for me and my brothers. I remember the first event I got to see almost live as it happened was it was a Saturday night's main event right before WrestleMania 8. Like, very distinctly remember that. Where it's Hogan and Sid Justice against Undertaker and Ric Flair, and Yeah, Sid Justice walks off the apron and leaves Hogan to get beat up by the two bad guys. It's brilliant. It's good stuff.
Awesome. So yeah, it was a kind of same thing in my country as well, because I remember as a kid it was really hard to get to see anything more than what they show you. Like I remember in 1994, 95, they were showing WWE superstars, and they were always advertising for pay-per-views, but there was no way to actually buy, even to pay 1,000 billion of dollars. There was no way to actually buy the thing. So I remember as a kid being advertising all the time, this match is gonna happen, and it's gonna be The Undertaker versus Yokozuna, and it was like, whoa, this is the match I wanted to see, but I couldn't even buy it. And in South Switzerland was really hard to get your hands on any what's it called, the VHS.
Yeah,
there was back then. In North Switzerland they probably had more access because it's close to Germany, and Germany it was always big, especially in mid-90s. It was pretty big, but like I said, in South Switzerland we get nothing more than what you can get on TV. And the first thing I did when I restarted watching wrestling in the early 2000s, it was actually downloading this old pay-per-view that I never had the chance to see. And hopefully, because I wasn't in wrestling at all, like I told before in this podcast. I've been out of wrestling from 96 to, like I said, the early 2000s, maybe 2002, 2003. I was completely off of wrestling.
Yeah.
And because of the internet, I was able to restart watching wrestling, but I didn't watch the current wrestling at that time. I just simply, I went like, hey, I remember that fucking pay-per-view that I never had a chance to see. Now I want to see, Undertaker versus The Undertaker, or Undertaker Yokozuna, or Lex Luger, going to his, because he was the top babyface back then. And so that kind of threw me back in wrestling, and then I restart watching current stuff like WWE, Monday Night Raw, and that's my side of the story. And so how did you actually get into wrestling? Like first training, or like first thought, or hey, maybe I can do this?
Well, it was a very gradual thing, and like the biggest thing is I never actually intended becoming a wrestler. It was the furthest thing from my thoughts. So like I'd said, I stopped watching wrestling around 2000, 2001. Whenever it was that Triple H dropped Stone Cold, or maybe it was the other way around. One of them dropped the other. They'd picked up the car in a crate and they dropped it, and the car had exploded, and like everybody should have been dead. But like I think this was SmackDown, and like I knew they were both going to be fine for, I don't know, the pay-per-view on Sunday or Raw on Monday, and that was enough. I checked out there and then, and I didn't watch for years. And then I oddly, like you, I wasn't interested in current wrestling, but I kind of found my nostalgia trip through TNA. I randomly found a TNA show in like 2007, 2008. And of course they had Kurt Angle and Sting, and they had the Dudley Boys, they had the Steiner Brothers, they had stuff like this. So I used to watch that, and I still wasn't watching WWE. I was just kind of watching TNA for my nostalgia fix, and then obviously got to see some of their younger guys coming up. And I really got back into enjoying wrestling. I went to see a couple of TNA house shows when I was in Scotland, and while I was there, I'd got a flyer for a local independent show in Glasgow, and I had no idea there was local independent wrestling. I'd never seen anything like this. So I turned up to the show and I went along. It was just a few days later, and I was blown away. Like, these guys did everything I've seen on TV and more, but like, this sounds, I don't want to bury anyone, but like, they looked like normal people, but they were in wrestling gear and they were doing these crazy things I had seen on TV. And but it was great. There was a lot of interaction. While I was there, they announced they kind of advertised their training school and explained that everybody you've seen tonight came through our training school, and if you'd like to find out more about wrestling, you can come along tomorrow morning, and gave the time and the address and things like that. So I went along with no intention of ever being a wrestler. I just wanted to find out how wrestling worked. I mean, obviously I read little bits here and there on the internet. I typed in pro wrestling into Wikipedia, and like, it seemed pretty straightforward on there. So I wanted to find out how it actually works, because it couldn't be as simple as people were talking about it on the internet. So I went along to training, and like pretty much the next day, and I was hooked. Again, no intent.
What year was that?
I want to say 2010, 2011, somewhere around there. I think it was either the end of 2010 or the beginning of 2011. Okay. And it was early 2011. So I went along, and I loved the training. Before I got involved in wrestling, I was an ice hockey player, and I played to fairly high standard. I played for Scotland and little bits for Great Britain, and there's things like that. So I wouldn't say I was in amazing shape, but I was used to training hard. That wasn't a difficulty for me. So I went.
Did you play at professional level?
Did a little bit of semi-pro.
Semi-pro.
There was option to, but there wasn't a great deal of money in it, and I kind of.
Well, it's not a big deal in UK. Ice hockey never.
It's not so big, no. Yeah. Like when I try and tell people that, because I was the netminder, and I try and tell people I was the netminder for Scotland. At one point, I was like,
you mean the goalie?
Yeah. So I was like, but really, like, it sounds pretty impressive, but really it means that I was deemed to be better than the other 4 guys in the league. So it was it wasn't such a huge accomplishment. But so it wasn't so popular, and I was kind of losing interest in that. And then I went away to university, and I studied, and I kind of I did a little bit of coaching there. I coached the roller hockey team, because I had a roller hockey team at the university I went to. So I did that, but I didn't really pursue it much. It was more just a little hobby. But I was used to training hard, so I enjoyed challenging myself at training, and it was difficult, but I still wasn't intending to be a wrestler. I just wanted to find out how this stuff worked. And then obviously through training, I was given the opportunity to take on more responsibility, perhaps because I was a little bit older than the other guys. I was maybe I was 24, 25 when I started. So, I was asked to go help drive the ring van. I was asked to help with security at shows. I was asked to pick up the foreign talent at the airports. So I was asked to referee, to be the ring announcer, to do music. And I did, over a very short period of maybe 3 months, 3, maybe 4 months, I got like a complete education in almost every aspect of running a show.
But that's how you should do. Like I think is the best thing you can possibly do. Well, at least if like maybe I'm not gonna use you as a referee, because I don't want to expose you in the same show that maybe in 3 months you're gonna wrestle into. Uh-huh. But at the same time, it's great that you learn how to do it, because I think that there's a lot of wrestlers out there that they don't really know the rules, or they like you must be a ref once, or at least even in a training session, to see what's the referee standpoint. You see what I'm saying here. So it's always great to learn a little bit of everything. So you should not be like the best referee in the world, but like every once in a while, I think it's great to let the guys referee the other guys in the training session, so they can see how it is the referee point of view, and they more focus on the rules, and they start thinking of things that they may not thought as a wrestler, because as a wrestler you just wrestle, and it seems like the referee is there to take care of rules. But that's bullshit, because that's the way we think, because wrestling is fixed. But if it was real and you played a professional sport with real rules like ice hockey, you must know the rules, because otherwise I mean, you get penalty or I mean, you're not going to win in any way. So you must know the rules. And I feel like because professional wrestling is not a competition, there's a lot of guys out there that they don't know the rules.
Absolutely. I'm sure we've all got horror stories of being in the ring and the referee either not stopping something or doing something he shouldn't do. I was in a triple threat match a few weeks ago, and one of the guys had been knocked out of the ring, and he'd gone for a walk and was just leaving us two in the ring. The referee's trying to count him out. So I'm like, so I had to grab the referee in the middle of the match and try and explain to the referee that you can't count him out. Like that's not how a triple threat match works. Like, there's all sorts of things, like these things crop up every now and again because I think people aren't necessarily given time to learn to be a referee. And where I trained, it was really important. It was almost the last step before you become a wrestler. You had to referee a few shows. Personally, I loved it. You being up close, like the closest seat in the house, really. Getting to see some of the really experienced guys, some of the foreign import wrestlers that come over, being so close and seeing exactly what they're doing, when they're doing it, and why. Like that, I found it really important to my learning, and even now, still, like I love refereeing whenever I get the chance.
Yeah, and the rule about the rules, I found I was looking for something that I wasn't sure about, and I actually found the American Wrestling Association rules. And it's like 5 pages of rules. And there's so much shit in there that you realize, like, nobody ever told me those things.
No.
But you know, if you play a professional sport, you should know the rules. And professional wrestling has a lot of rules. Some of them have been dropped through the years. Like WWE now allowed punches and. Also, there's several other rules that have been changed through the years. Another one is the tag. Like if you listen to, for example, Jim Cornette on his podcast, he said that several times. He said, you know, the tag should be hand to hand, and that's the way it always has been. And then I was like, wait a second, because if I watch this WWE stuff, even back in the days, you know, it has been many years since they no longer use just the hand, but they also use the body part to tag. But I actually found out that that was true, at least according to the NWA or the AWA rules from the 50s. Back then, it was actually written in the rules that a tag should be made by touching the hand of your partner.
And a lot of that stuff's regional as well. I mean, don't quote me on this, but as far as I'm aware, in the British rules, you can tag any body part. I remember I was doing some training with Rip Rogers, which was some experience, and he had us doing a tag match. And I had the guy. I think I had the guy in the front face lock, and I lifted my leg for my partner to tag my foot, which, as far as I was aware, in the British rules of wrestling, that's absolutely legal. So I'd done that, and Rip had lost his marbles a little bit at what I was doing, and he was the same thing. He's like, it has to be hand to hand, and like, obviously I didn't want to argue with him, but I think a lot of these rules are just regional. Like in some countries, some continents, they do things one way, but it's a different another way. And like now look at Mexico, the rules are completely different than it is in America, and it's just over a border, really.
Well, the problem is there is not an official, like, well, yeah, you can take the American Wrestling Association one or the NWA or whatever you can, but it's really hard to find actually. Like you can't just go on the fucking website and download them, which it should make sense, like the NWA putting out the rules. So everything I found, I really took me time to find it. Or like the tag rules, I found that somebody posted on Twitter a picture of, like I said, the NWA or AWA rules of the 50s, and in there it was written that way. So I actually saw it written somewhere. But anyway, it's not always easy to follow some rules, and I understand that through the years they change.
Yeah.
Also, the rules behind the punches, there was a specific reason why it wasn't allowed, especially because the heels can throw punches and cheat in that way. That's why Ric Flair, to throw punches, he used to grab your head, kind of a headlock, and hide from the referee and punch in that way, so the referee can see it, and he was punching you in a way that it is not supposed to be allowed. But just through the years, stuff change and whatever. So let's go back to your career and through your journey through the wrestling. So you said you started wrestling in 2011, and so how was the training? Like the memories of, like, well, you said you learned a lot of things in the first 3 months, but like, have you ever had that moment where you go like, why am I doing this? Because I think, like, at least in the first week when you start, see how wrestling really is, I think that at least once everybody had this thought, like, why did I sign up for this?
I don't know. Like, I think part of the reason was that I went in not really wanting or anticipating being a wrestler. I mean, I'm 5'11". I'm maybe I don't even know. Right now I'm sitting about 83 kilograms, but this is the heaviest I've ever been in my life. At the time I was maybe 67, 68 kilograms. Like, I was small. Like, I wasn't physically imposing. I never dreamt of ever becoming a wrestler. So at the time, I was just going to have fun. And the school that I was with had a bit of a philosophy on this, that they would give you a fairly intense workout at the beginning of the session, and that's you earning your spot in the ring. So if you don't get through the warm up through the workout, which was normally about maybe 40 minutes to an hour, if you can't get through that, you don't get to spend the next couple of hours in the ring. So for me, I wanted to get in the ring and have fun and learn how things work. I didn't want to get halfway through a workout and think, oh, I'll go home now because I can't finish it. So it never even entered my mind to stop, You just keep pushing through. And again, I think that comes back to my background of playing sports growing up. You don't give up. You just keep working until either you finish or your body fails on you.
Yeah, and how was your first match? So you started training in 2011, and when did you had your first match? In the same year?
Yeah. Well, I debuted very quickly. Like I said, I was obsessed with it. But again, I was just having fun. I had no aspirations of wrestling. But at the same time, our school was open a lot.
Does it still exist, the school?
Yeah. It's the Source Wrestling
name?
School. Source Wrestling School in Glasgow. It's currently run by Mikey Whiplash, who's a hugely respected English wrestler. He's a veteran of the British scene. But when I started training, it was run by a big demo, Killian Dane. And like my class, who I was training with, kind of reads like a who's who. So when I first started training, I was training with Joe Coffey, Mark Coffey, Jackie Polo, Nikki Cross, who else? Grado. He was still training at the time. And then a couple of years later, like we had Joe Hendry and stuff come in. So a lot of really good talent came through, and that's who I was learning with and from every single day. So from there, I was able to debut really quickly, because what I did was there was 4 training sessions a week, and that was the group sessions. And then outside of like the group classes, you could have a private lesson with Demo, with Killian Dane. So I did something related to wrestling every single day. So I was either, if I wasn't training, if there wasn't a group class, I was doing private lessons with Demo. Or if there wasn't a group lesson or a private lesson, I was out doing posters, giving out flyers, trying to advertise the next show. Or I was helping with work on the ring or cleaning up the school or whatever. So like every day I was doing something. And as a result, I learned very, very quickly. I was one of the fastest to debut at the school. I think I had my first match after think maybe like 4 or 5 months of training, and I'd already had my first match. But it was a funny one. Like it's probably still the best match I've ever had. There was a big problem. So I was told like a week before that I was going to wrestle on the show, and I was put with one of my trainers, who's one of my dearest friends. He's probably my favorite guy in the world to wrestle. A guy called ɡğүʟᴛᴏ, based out of Glasgow, and he. So I was working him, and his job was always to work with the new guys, and that's kind of the role that I've ended up in, and I'm so happy about that. So what happened was we were supposed to go on second last. We were just a very short cool down match before the main event.
Yeah.
And like, yeah, there was no nerves, there was no anticipation, because I know how good ɡğүʟᴛᴏ is. He'll get me through. Doesn't matter how badly I mess up, he'll get me through. So I was very happy about it. But it turned out on the day of the show, there was rumors going around that the guys in the main event were also doing another show that day, and they had to travel. They were doing a double shot, and it ended up they weren't going to make it on time, so they didn't make it at all. So halfway through the show, we get told instead of having like a very short cool down match to bring the crowd down before the main, we were going to be the main event. So as a result, the match had to change completely. So I went out, my first match, ended up main event in the show. Again, nothing to do with me. It was all because of my opponent. Yeah. It went really well. He took amazing care of me. The match was really good, and yeah, it couldn't have went any better. Sometimes I still think it's the best match I ever had.
I had my first match in front of the crowd was also a main event, a title match, and I got some heat from that because, of course, these guys that were training there for years, they've seen me coming there and out of nowhere, ending up to have the main event in the first show they have been doing for years, because they were doing show before I got there down in Italy when I came back to Europe from Canada. So I went there and I start actually the first day I went there training. I actually start training other people because I got trained in Canada. So when I came back, my skills in-ring skills were way much better than anything's there. So because of that, I started training, and I got some heat from that, of course, because these guys never seen me before. And out of nowhere, I got there and started actually training them. And also when we had a show, like I said, the first match I had in front of a crowd, they put me in a main event and for the title match. But I also knew that me and the other guy that had a main event, we actually were the only two guys that could wrestle. Like, that seems like we were wrestling. And so I didn't, I wasn't like, oh yeah, I'm in a main event, because I knew I wasn't in a main event just because we were the only two guys that could actually wrestle. So because the other guys, they didn't train much, they were not really interested in learning anything, and so whatever. And by the way, to me, that wasn't my best match at all, because technically. From a technical standpoint, moves, technique, and really in-ring skills, we certainly were some of the best guy in the whole country back then. Actually, both Switzerland and Italy, but we had no fucking idea how to put a match together. So the psychology was like mess up completely, like zero psychology. And so I will never ever put that match, not even close to my top 10, top 50 or whatever. It was a good memory because it was the first match in front of the crowd, in front of my parents. But beside that, there was a long way from that match to what I do now. So before keep going to talking about your career, we take a short break and then we'll be back with part 2. This episode of the European Wrestling Podcast has been provided to you by Pro Wrestling Live Events. Pro Wrestling Live Events is a European promotion based in Switzerland, Lugano. You can check out Pro Wrestling Live Events on YouTube, where you can find over 100 videos, including interviews, highlights, and of course a lot of matches, over 70 matches. Pro Wrestling Live Events is also on Facebook and Instagram, and of course there's the website prowrestling.ch, where you can find all the links of the videos, a lot of information about the championship, statistics, and info about the next events, and of course also information about Pro Wrestling Training Ticino, the wrestling academy behind Pro Wrestling Live Events, where a lot of new guys are coming out and starting their career in Europe. So one more time, Pro Wrestling Live Events, and please subscribe to the YouTube channel, because there's a lot of videos coming.
European Wrestling Podcast.
Welcome back to the European Wrestling Podcast. Today we have Tom Fulton from Scotland, and actually you are from Scotland, Tom, but you no longer live in Scotland. So you moved to Romania, but maybe we talk about that a little bit later. Let's focus on your journey first. So we were talking about your first match, and then so how did you end up in Romania? Like, what happened from 2011 to where you are now?
Well, oddly, it happened in 2011.
Same year?
Yeah. I get really apprehensive when people try and call what I do in wrestling a career. It's really not. I don't pay my bills from what I make in wrestling. Any money that I earn in wrestling is a nice little bonus on top of what I do. For a career, I'm a school teacher. And as it was, there was very little work for me as a primary school teacher or an elementary teacher in Scotland. So I'd accepted a job in Romania before I'd even started training. So I managed to get a few matches in during the summer before I moved to Romania. And being a school teacher, I have pretty good holidays. So when what would happen is I would live in Romania and travel back to Scotland to further my training and to get more experience in more matches and wrestle in more different places during all of the school vacations. So that was kind of what happened for me. So I originally had only intended moving to Romania for 2 years. I had a 2-year contract, and it's ended up I've stayed and all sorts of things have gone on. When I got to Romania, I thought I'll just continue to wrestle when I get to Romania. I know there's some level of professional wrestling in pretty much every country in Europe, and Romania is a huge country. So I figured I'd just wrestle when I got here, but when I got here, I realized there is no pro wrestling. There has never been any pro wrestling. There is literally no one here I could train with or even wrestle matches with. So I kind of had this... I'd always had this idea in the back of my head, was that I wanted to run the first sort of independent wrestling show in Romania. Here's where I blame Damo, Killian Dane. I want to put him over before I say anything. Big Damo or Killian Dane, he taught me so much about every aspect of the business, but also took such incredible care of me. Like, I wouldn't be anywhere without him. At one point I had nowhere to live. I lived on his sofa for quite a while, and I wasn't able to pay rent. So I would go to his wrestling school, and I would work in his wrestling school. I would be the crash test dummy for all the guys who wanted to try out new moves. But I learned so much, and that was how I repaid him for the rent. So all the time I was talking to Damo about, it's like, one day I want to run a show here. I want to run a show. And then we just sat down one night, and he explained every single step of what I need to do. And one of the things he said is, like, you need to run a wrestling school, because you need to have, as you well know, you need to have a team of guys who can do all of the jobs that are required on a show day, and also you can put them on the show as well, and that'll help with ticket sales. You can advertise the first ever Romanian wrestler and all of this stuff. So, like, none of the ideas were mine. It was all Damo. So Damo kind of pushed me to do it, and I say pushed, that's not right. He encouraged me to do it. So that was why I opened up a wrestling school out here. I also had got lots of videos from a bunch of backyarders, and these guys were killing themselves, like dropping each other on their heads. And like, what do you think? Because they'd heard somehow that there was a professional wrestler living in Romania now. So they were sending me footage of these guys murdering each other. So I was like, right, I can kill two birds in one stone. I can bring those guys over to, I rented a little boxing gym and we ran training out of there. So I can take them down to the ring and I can show them a few things, and that way they're at least not going to kill each other by trying to copy what they've seen on TV. So, I'd at least feel a little better about myself that I'm not going to see them on the news having wrestling fans murder each other in Bucharest, So I taught a bunch of guys. I ran the first show. I didn't really want to run a promotion. I wanted to run a show, and that'd be the end of it. And what happened, everything spiraled out of control after that. The show was not a success, as most first shows are not. And to be honest, it went really well for what it was. It was the first time they'd had a wrestling show in the country and all of this sort of stuff. But I had a lot of, let's say, business partners. I had people who'd promised me various different services. I had people that promised advertising, guys that were going to get me on media, and like local media, national media, all of this stuff. And of course, everything fell through.
Of course.
So in the end, I had already I'd booked the talent. I was lucky enough that I had enough connections around Europe that I was able to put on what I thought was a pretty good card. So we had Killian Dane, we had Nikki Cross. We had the guy who I had my first match with, Glenn Dunbar. We had him. We had Joe Hendry, who's in Ring of Honor now. We had a lot of really good wrestlers. So I had already booked these guys and paid for their flights, and I was just like, right, I can either cancel the show because it'd be practically impossible for me to do all of these jobs that I was relying on others to do, or I can just go for it. I can gamble and we can see if it works. So I gambled, see if it worked. Yeah, it was okay. We drew over 100. We had over 100 fans for the first show in Romania. That was okay. So I'm kind of happy with that. 102 was the final ticket sales. But I was left very disillusioned by it. I'm very stubborn, so I was like, right, I'm going to stay here until I can make this work. But I got injured during the show. And I didn't know how bad the injury was because, as I'm sure you'll know, every time you get hurt, you just walk it off. It'll be better tomorrow. It'll be better next week. Yeah. And I put off going to the doctors and put it off. And then eventually I was told that I had torn all 4 meniscus in one go. And because I had continued to try and walk on it, I'd caused irreparable damage to my ankles, my hips, my lower back, because I was trying to compensate for my inability to bend my knees. So yeah, I was told that was it. I'll never wrestle again. I was told this by many people, and I have this miracle worker physiotherapist. He took a look at me and he told me the same thing, and he's helped me with a lot of problems that I've had over the years. He told me I wouldn't wrestle again, so I'd kind of accepted it. So I'd moved to Germany. I had an option to get a job in Germany and get better healthcare. And I was out there for a few months, and then I was coming home to Scotland just to spend time with my friends. I was going to stay with Damo again, and he said to me, he's like, "Look, we've got a big battle royal, like a Royal Rumble-esque match." And he's like, "You never got to say goodbye to everybody, so would you like to be in the Rumble? Come down, say goodbye to everybody, have one last wave to the crowd." And I'll help you out the ring as gently as possible. I know you can't do anything. We don't want to hurt your knees. I was like, sure, I'd love to do that. So in the meantime, I'd been doing various physiotherapy and stretching and just things that my physio had given me. And he had told me, he'd been very honest. He's like, you're not going to wrestle again, but this will improve your quality of life. It'll help you to walk around easier. So I did everything he said, 3 times a day, all the rest of it. I went to see him. And told him, look, I'm going to wrestle tomorrow. I'm not going to do anything too physical, but like I just wanted you to give me a check and see what you think. And as if by magic, my hips had realigned, my lower spine had realigned, my ankles were better. And he looked at my MRI scan and he's like, you really shouldn't be walking. And he's like, we can't really explain. He's like, you're sure this doesn't hurt? I was like, I think it doesn't hurt. I'm like, maybe I'm used to the pain. So he instructed me to slowly get back into training, very gradually. So over a period of maybe, I think it was over a year, I slowly started training and started increasing the intensity of my training. I wrestled maybe one match a month, maybe around that, just so I could, get back into it. And then I increased everything. I went to see the physio again, and he's like, you know what? If your knees, they seem okay, as long as you don't take any crazy risks, like, you'll maybe be okay. And he's like, I had to understand this was the risk I was taking. But as soon as I got the all clear from the physio, I came straight back to Romania, reopened my school, reopened my promotion, and was like, right, we're going to do it, and we're going to make it work this time. And that's kind of where we are now.
Awesome. And I gotta tell you, to me it was a great experience coming there in Romania, because new place, and like you said, a little bit like Switzerland or the whole mid Europe. Wrestling, it is not in the culture. It's not like the UK. The rest of the Europe is not part of the culture at all, except maybe for Germany and France a little bit, but like certainly not part of the culture in Romania. So it's interesting because the crowd you have there, they really have no idea what's going on, and so you can you must work them from the scratch, like but that's challenging sometimes, because that's something that I see a lot in the indies. People think that the crowd, they know everything about wrestling, including the rules and and stuff. Not really. And sometimes I see sometimes guys doing things that, like, that's why in my show I barely never book matches like with crazy finishers. And if I do, well, sometimes I do with the purpose to teach them, like, hey, let's have for once in a while a match that ends with a submission, with somebody actually tapping out, so we can teach them that you can also win in that way, but you must do it right, otherwise it's wasting time. So to do it right, you need to have a match where you constantly go for a submission. People can understand, hey, this guy is actually trying to win in this way, or you can see the referee. And also we have the speaker that is making live commentary, and he was telling you, oh, he's gonna tap, and if he's gonna tap, the match is over. And so in that way we kind of teach our crowd that you can actually win that way, because not everybody watch WWE. Actually, not everybody watch wrestling. The people that comes to see your show, there's a lot of people that they just come there because somebody invited them, or they hear there's something new in the town going on. That let's just go and check it out what's going on. But they had no idea what's going on, and so it's up to you to teach them and to do simple stuff. I always tell my student, you must have a match with this kind of crowd. You always have you should have a match that even the most stupid, retarded guy in the crowd can understand what's going on.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I mean, being trained and starting wrestling in the UK, it's very different because we have such a culture of wrestling. There's
that's
wrestling
a whole different deal,
everywhere.
UK.
But at the same time, the way that I view wrestling is the way that I view it in the UK. Most wrestling fans, well, depends how you define wrestling fans. The guys that watch Monday Night Raw every week, the guys that watch AEW and SmackDown and talk about wrestling online all the time, generally don't buy tickets to wrestling shows. They're gonna they barely leave their parents' basements, but they spend all their time talking about wrestling online, and they'll watch everything. They're experts on the product, but that's not the audience. I'm being very general when I say this. That's not generally the audience who turn up to wrestling shows. the wrestling shows that I wrestle on a lot of family-friendly shows. So basically, the goal there is a child has seen a poster and is like, oh, I want to go to that. Because the child wants to go, dad's got to go with him. And dad doesn't really want to go and watch wrestling. So if he's got to go, he's dragging the wife with him as well. And the wife doesn't really want to go. But, if the three of them are going, they've got to take the daughter as well, because we can't leave her at home. So we've sold 4 tickets, and we have, I don't know, maybe a quarter of the audience are the one person that wanted to go, because the rest are the family who've been dragged along to this wrestling show. So our goal is to entertain the child while also finding a way to reach the people who didn't necessarily want to come to see a wrestling show. Like one of the things I always think is one of the greatest compliments was, you always find the odd dad or so after the show that'll come up to you and is like, I really didn't want to come to see this phony wrestling nonsense, but did you really hit him? Because it looked like there was a bit there where you really caught him. And for me, that's the compliment. That's like I've made him question what he was watching. Same to me. And it's like, and there you go. Like that's how I view a wrestling show. You should always treat the fans like they don't really know what they're watching, because most of them don't.
My biggest achievement is actually to make people not interested in wrestling like wrestling. And the best compliment I ever had is to have somebody, like you said, coming up to me after the show and going like, I only came here because I had to bring my kids here, but I like it. I never seen any wrestling on TV, never been interested. I always knew what it was, but never really, never seen any wrestling going on. And I kind of like it. I mean, I see that it's done professionally. I see that there's some work behind the scenes, and that when you do it right, that's the greatest thing in the world. At the same time, if you do it wrong, like some garbage show that you can see sometime around, that's the completely opposite, because then the people that never been interested in wrestling, they come to see maybe 2 out of shape fuckers playing in the ring, pretending to be athlete when they're really not, and so they fucked up pro wrestling itself. They burned the territory, or let's say the city or the town, whatever you want to call it, and whoever comes next is not gonna sell any tickets, because the fuckers coming there before you, they fucked up the place.
It happens everywhere. I've seen it. I've seen it in a lot of places. This is what happens. I don't know if you want to put the blame on the promotions, on the training schools, on whoever's letting these wrestlers go in the ring without the appropriate knowledge or before they're ready. But it does happen.
Well, I think in Europe the problem is that we don't have any. When I talk about Europe, I should, it's except UK, because UK is completely different than Central Europe. But let's say in Central Europe, we don't have any guy who is a true veteran, like somebody who has been around for years. Like you can find in the United States, you can find guys like Ricky Morton, Bobby Fulton, those guys that you have been trained with when you went to the United States. We can talk about that later. And those guys, they have so much knowledge that if you do something wrong, they're gonna tell you, and you're not gonna do it next time. Okay, but if there's nobody telling you, like I said, when I first started out wrestling, when I came back from Canada, I was there only 4 months, so I only learned the moves and technique, but I had no, I had no time to learn the psychology. So when I came back, I wasn't ready to wrestle, but I was wrestling. But there was nobody there to tell me, hey, what you're doing in the ring is not what you're supposed to do. And so I've been doing that for like 3 years before I actually, had somebody telling me, hey, fix this shit, because this is not how you're supposed to do. So if there's nobody there to tell you, that's a huge problem.
I agree. Like in a lot of ways, I was lucky in that fact that I was able to find reputable training school and reputable trainers. I mean, from a very early start, Mikey Whiplash was giving lessons at the school that I trained at. It's now his school. But I mean, he's one of the most experienced guys you'll find. He's probably had about maybe 10,000 matches. And he would wrestle on the holiday camp tours. He was wrestling maybe 2-4 matches a day, constantly on tour, do an afternoon show and an evening show. And he's wrestled. He was over in over in South Africa, all over Europe. And like he kind of changed the wrestling scene in Scotland, because there was a lot of what we've just described going on in Scotland. People were paying their money, going to a wrestling school and being trained by someone who, and it's not a criticism of them. They're doing the best that they can, but they don't realize that what they're doing isn't great. So they're teaching everybody, and people are paying their money and like, oh, coach says I need to do this. And they're listening to the coach, and what their coach is telling them isn't great, because the guy who trained them wasn't great. So you're right. We do need a figure who really knows what they're doing to kind of help a whole scene. And certainly in Scotland, a lot of us were talking about this quite recently. Like when Mikey Whiplash moved up to Scotland and based himself there, that kind of changed a lot of things that went on in Scotland. I was really lucky that the school I was at was one of the first schools to bring in outsiders for seminars and things. So I was really lucky when I first started. I was able to train with Finn Balor, with Johnny Moss, Paul Tracy, those guys, Robbie Brookside, who's the NXT coach now. Like these guys would come up to our school and would kind of almost retrain our trainers and then show us better ways to do things. And that kind of over the years has spread out throughout the Scottish scene. And like, in my opinion, that's why the Scottish scene is doing as well as it is just now.
Well, I think it's improving a little bit everywhere, because now there's much more people traveling, going to the States or having stage with the pro guys. And I think through the years has been improved this aspect of European wrestling. Also, if I think just about myself, when I was training other people back in 2006, 2007, those years, it was completely different than now, because through those years I've been going back to Canada. I went to Team 3D Academy in Florida for 6 months and going back again a couple of times. So when I teach now, it's way much different than back then. And in fact, I had students that in just 4 years, they reach everything that I have done in 15 years. You know, they almost up to my level now, because, you know, I'm now able to tell them those things, what not to do, what to do, but it took me like 15 years to put all this information together to
Absolutely.
Teach them now.
Yeah, they're having to learn from the mistakes that you made so that they don't.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. No, I understand that.
And so talking about traveling, you had a hell of a travel in the United States, and it was a great experience. You were telling me about this when we met in Romania. And man, when I've seen the tour you were taking, I was thinking I should have done that, because I've been in North America, I think now is 9 times, but most of the time it was for just training, training, and focusing on just training. And I never thought, except for the couple of last years, I never thought about actually traveling around. And I think maybe I should have done that a little bit more, because you took a hell of a tour. So tell me about that tour you had this summer, or actually last summer, 2019, in the United States and Mexico and Canada.
Yeah. Well, I'm a very lucky guy. I kind of fell backwards into most of it. My original plan isn't what happened. It ended up being so much more. But obviously, with the guys who trained me, like Nikki Cross and Killian Dane, they're working for WWE and they're based in Florida. And they'd always said, open invitation, come over and stay with us anytime. So I'd kind of intended going to stay in Florida for a couple of months in the summer. Like I say, I'm a school teacher, so I have like a 7-8 week vacation in the summer. Normally, I would spend that time in the UK trying to do as much training and as much wrestling or all around the UK as I can. But I kind of figured, like, if I want to take a gamble on myself, like, nobody's going to gamble on me if I don't go for it first. So I thought, right, I'll go to Florida and I'll wrestle in Florida for 2 months. And then a lot of things happened while I was trying to plan this. I kind of fell in love with lucha libre, which was so left field from the kind of wrestling I was watching, but it just spoke to me. So I was like, you know what? While I'm in Florida, I'm going to go and see ɪᴛᴇ. Like AAA was like my favorite promotion in Mexico, and I wanted to see their biggest show of the year. So I was like, I'll go over and do that. And then while I was there, while I was planning the trip, I was asking them, like, where's the WWE pay-per-views going to be? So, you know, 'cause I wanted to see my friends wrestle on the big pay-per-views, and they're like, SummerSlam's in Canada, it's in Toronto. And I was like, well, I'll just go to Toronto as well. And then I was kind of advised, you know, if I'm for visa issues, it would be difficult to keep crossing the borders and going back to Florida every time. So I was like, okay, I'll base myself in Florida, then I'll go to Mexico, then I'll go to Mexico for a couple of weeks, then I'll go to Canada for a couple of weeks. And then while I was doing that, I just got in touch with promotions and schools and asked if I could come along to the training schools and if there would be any work for me. And the response was amazing. So I ended up spending very little time with my friends in Florida, but I did wrestle. I wrestled in Florida, Alabama, Tennessee, North Carolina, up in Philadelphia, New York. I ended up traveling all the way up the East Coast, and then like the things that happened out of it were crazy. I'd arranged to go to Chuckey, Tennessee, to train with one of my. You know, I was being a fanboy. I'm not going to try and say I wasn't. Ricky Morton works in the School of Morton in Chuckey, Tennessee. He's one of my favorite wrestlers ever, and I've stolen so much from him over the years. So I figured I may as well pay him for the pleasure. So I asked if I could go and do a day's training with Ricky Morton. So I went down there, did the day's training. We hit it off pretty well. He liked some of the things I did. Next thing I know, I'm wrestling on a show the next night with him, and he's asked me to be his tag partner. It was incredible. And then from there, I went over to Mexico. Had like the craziest experiences ever. Like I don't know if people truly understand how different lucha libre is from traditional American wrestling or even British wrestling or Japanese wrestling, but just the cultural differences out there were incredible. I had so much fun. I'm not exactly sure, but I'm looking at the possibility of going back to Mexico again, and maybe staying out there for a couple of months, because yeah, I'm just scratching the surface of what's possible out there. And then again, up to Canada as well. I had a great time in Canada wrestling. I was based only in Ontario, which is huge anyway, so I got to see a lot of the province out there. But that was set up by Rip Impact. I want to make shout out to Rip. Rip Impact runs Hamilton Pro Wrestling. He took great care of me. He helped introduce me to a lot of promoters, and was able to find places for me to go wrestle when I was in Canada. So yeah, I met a lot of great people, had a lot of great experiences, great matches, great training. Had spent a week at Chikara, training with ɪᴑᴇ and Mike Quackenbush, and then I wrestled for Chikara while I was out there as well. Like, amazing experiences, very different from the type of training that I've had in the UK and all around Europe. I've done a lot of traveling for training. But yeah, it couldn't have went any better, really. Now I'm left with I was looking back on my 2019 and I did so many amazing things, and now I've got to wonder, like, what am I going to do this year? Because, you know, I like to challenge myself. I have to top that. I don't know if I'm going to be able to top that, so we'll see what happens.
So what's the craziest things that happen in this tour?
I think some of the stuff in Mexico was outrageous, because my Spanish, I'm not going to lie, I may have embellished my ability to speak Spanish when I got some of the when I was given some of the matches in Mexico. And I figured, I was like, it's okay, I can speak a very little Spanish, but I learned a little Spanish, not Mexican Spanish, and I found out it was very, very different. And none of the guys out there really spoke English. So, you know, I'd go out to wrestle matches having no idea. Like, I don't want to, tear the curtain down too much, but like, there was no communication whatsoever. We were just going off each other's body language. No idea what's happening in the match. I have no idea what I'm meant to be doing. I have no idea what's going to happen to me. And it's just following what's going on and thinking to myself, I've watched enough wrestling. I've studied tape like nobody's business. I should be able to work out what I'm meant to do here. And that was kind of how that worked. And like one of like probably my favorite moment in the tour, because I could see one of the shows I did was it was down on the beach in Acapulco. It was beautiful setup in this lovely big nightclub, and I could see the guys who I was wrestling against, like the looks they were giving me because we couldn't communicate. Like they did not have high hopes for our match, and we'd reached this point where we'd reached a point in the match. It was between two of the falls, and I'm getting beaten up, and I'm trying to reach, and I've got kids grabbing my arm, trying to pull me out the ring and save me from this dastardly bad man who's beating me up. He's pulling my leg, and we're kind of having this tug of war with the child. And then he eventually pulls me in, and he puts me in this horrible, horrible hold, and he's kissing me, and nobody can see because of the way he's got this hold on. He's kissing me on the head, and he's like, muy bien, muy fucking bien. And I was like, well, I guess that means I know how to work. It's like, so it was just such a great feeling to go out there. It was validation, really, that all the training and all the work I put in over the years, I was able to go in, wrestle a completely different style, completely different rules, completely different culture, no communication with anybody. And that was a I did a 6-man tag and an 8-man tag, and I wasn't really able to talk to my partners or my opponents about anything that was going on. So for me, that was a huge, that was probably the highlight for me.
Awesome. I also had an experience. Great. I was thinking, meanwhile you were telling this, I was thinking about, I've been telling you about my first match before. And that was, the first match in front of the crowd. But when I think back, I think that I should say that my very professional wrestling first match wasn't that one, but it actually happened a couple of years later, in 2008, when I was in Canada again. In a tour. We were doing a tour across Canada, and that was the first time I actually went from just jumping around in the ring to actually understand what the fuck is going on in the ring. Yeah. And so it was kind of restart from the scratch. And I remember the match I had with Murat, the Turkish guy.
Oh yeah.
And I guess at pro level, I think that was the first one, because like I said, the first one I had in front of the crowd, I didn't feel much pressure because we were just, doing the spot that we have been trying 100 of times in the training session. So it was more a perform than actually working. Also, it was different. But in 2008, when I had a match with Murat, that was a different whole deal, because then I understood, okay, this is for real. Like, now we're talking, and now I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. And so I felt a little more pressure, and also, we had stuff to do more complicated, and we didn't even touch each other before starting the match. And I was, up to that time, I was still having matches with the spot that we have been trying before in the training. Never had anything about calling a lot of stuff or planning in 10 minutes, stuff like that. So I remember before walking, before starting the match. So I think I went out first. So my music played, and he came up to me and he said, "Don't worry, kid. Everything that goes wrong is your fault." So that was like a knife in the back. And but the match went pretty well for what I was doing at that level back then. And again, I wasn't even supposed to wrestle in the tour. I asked Rob Fuego, the owner of the Sport Circle Training in Toronto, Canada. I said, "Hey, you're doing a tour. Can I come with you?" He said, "Well, yeah, but I don't actually have a spot for you. You can be like a ring crew guy. Maybe you can referee, and let's see, bring your stuff and let's see."
Yeah.
And at the end, I had maybe 4 or 5 matches, and those were really like, those matches were the one that taught me how to work, like for real. So that was a great experience.
Yeah, I'm so jealous you got to work one of the tours in Canada. I would love to go on one of those big long tours.
Yeah, but also it makes you understand that, when you do it at the like WWE level, it's really like hard to do it from a physical and psychology standpoint, because after 3 days you wake up and you have no idea where you are, because you have been you travel 8 hours a day, and then you set up the ring, because in a short tour, low budget, you don't have the ring.
Of course.
So you have to set up the ring. You have like 10 minutes to put match together, and then you have to go over there, have the match, have fun, take some picture, and then boom, take the ring down, put everything in a truck, eat something, have a drink, go sleep, and then boom, again 8 hours the following day. So it's pretty hard, and like I said, after 3 days you wake up, you have no idea where the fuck you are, and that's pretty hard. So that was a great experience. But also, like I said, I think the biggest thing to me on that tour, it was that I was able to wrestle those guys that 3 years before I thought I will never even share the ring with. Not even once. Like, because when I got to Canada, these guys, to me, they were so great. Like, I was watching them as like, I will never reach their level. I will never be as good as them, and I never thought I will actually wrestle them. And then 3 years later, I'm in tour with these guys, and we're having match together, and that was a huge step for me. That was a very huge step for me. Probably a small step for the mankind, but it was a it was a huge step for me. That was a great tour. Great. So something I wanted to ask you, Tom, is to tell at least one of your crazy stories. I know you have many, and so that's why I think we should definitely have a second podcast, because those stories that you told me in the car when we were in Romania, or here in Switzerland when you came at a pro wrestling live Lugano last year, they were so crazy that you could, those are definitely stories that you can write in a book and sell to even people not even interested in wrestling, because we're so crazy. So it's up to you. Just pick one. It could be the one in Denmark, or it could be the one in there were so many that I let you pick whatever you want.
Sure. I will maybe do the Denmark one. The oh no, I feel really bad telling this story. I'm not shitting on anyone. This is just what happened. So like I was asked to come to Denmark and wrestle on a show in Copenhagen, and I didn't have a full knowledge of what was going on, but like I saw it was a joint show with two promotions, and it was a friend of mine, Chaos, who runs Dansk Pro Wrestling up in Randers. Awesome wrestler. I love Chaos. He kind of started pro wrestling in Denmark the same way that I kind of started the first promotion in Romania. So like when I first started up in Romania, these were the guys I contacted, like Chaos in Denmark, and like Eric Isaacson in Norway. Just people who had kind of been there at ground zero from day one and kind of started their own thing in their country, because I wanted to pick their brains. But yeah, at one point, Big Chaos had said he was going to bring me over for a show in Copenhagen. And then, so everything's sorted. We have the flights, and then we end up, yeah, we end up. I'm getting on the flight, and I realize like I'm flying to Malmo in Sweden, and like I don't know too much about the geography of the area, so I was flying to Sweden, and then I was supposed to catch a train to Copenhagen, and then as far as I know, I'm going to get picked up by Chaos. So I sent Chaos a message and let him know, and he's like, "Oh yeah, it's not really my show. It's being run by by some other guy." That's as I'm boarding the plane, because I was like, "Oh, I'll see you in a couple of hours," and he's like, "Oh no, I'm not coming till tomorrow. It's not my show." I was like, "All right, okay, cool." So then the next morning, a few hours later, I arrive in Malmo, get my phone back on. And luckily, I've got some contact details for the guy. So he sends over the contact details of it was Hangman, big Hangman in Copenhagen, and yeah, he's busy. And he's not able to get back to me right away. I later find out he didn't know that I was arriving like the day before the show. So this is Friday night. The show's on Saturday, and he assumed I was coming on the Saturday. So there's no provision arranged for me. I'm like, so. But he's not got back to me, so I end up taking a train into Copenhagen city centre and trying to work out what to do. No idea. Eventually, I get a hold of Hangman, and yeah, he tells me to go get some other train, some other place, jump on a bus, do this, then get a taxi. He'll pay for the taxi when I get there, and I'm like, man, like I know we in the wrestling community we trust everyone. Because we've all been in the same situation. But here's some guy I've never met, who I have no idea who he is, and I'm supposed to pay for taxis to drive all the way across a city that I don't know where I am, and I'm going to hope that when I get there, he's going to pay for it, because I don't have any Danish money. So yeah, it ends up we get there, he takes care of everything, and we go up, and then he apologizes. He's like, yeah, we didn't know you were coming. So there's nowhere for you. So I'm in his 1-bedroom apartment. There's a couple of guys in there because they're as it is the night before a show, doing the last minute prep, getting the video packages ready for the entrances and stuff. So like there's nowhere for me. So I end up finding somewhere to sleep in his apartment. And then I get woken up first thing in the morning, and he's like, "Hey, buddy," or "Hey, brother." He called me brother. I like that. Yeah, every 2 minutes, "Hey, brother." He's like, "Hey, brother, do you want to come and help us out, set up the ring and everything, or do you want to come down later?" And I love to go help with the ring and take care of things when I go visit somewhere. It's a good way to get to know all the guys, because quite often when I go, I get booked in different countries and different promotions, and I don't know anyone. So I'll go, and it's a good way to meet the guys, learn everybody's name, and get to know guys a little bit for while I'm there. So I go, I say I'll help with the ring. I was like, "I'm one of your team, whatever you need, no matter." So we leave at something crazy early, like, I don't know, 9-10 o'clock in the morning. Take the bus, go, and we travel to the other side of Copenhagen. Travel to the other side of Copenhagen, and it ends up.
I'm already laughing because now I know what's coming.
Yeah, I know. So I get there, and we get to the storage unit, and like yeah, so the ring's all in storage. It's like packed underneath like a stairwell, and yeah, we get there, and I was like, "Cool, where's the team?" "Oh, we're waiting for them." Okay, and we wait. Some kid comes up, lovely kid, maybe like 12, 13 years old. So now there's 3 of us, and we're waiting, and eventually, because he tells me we're going to get a trailer, and we're going to put all the stuff on a trailer. So, that's cool. Like, I've worked for promotions in Germany that used a trailer, and he's like, "Yeah, the venue's not so far away anyway." And there's some problem with the van, and he turns up, and the van is, the van's not big enough to get all the pieces of the ring in it. So, yeah, I'm kind of told we've got no option but to walk the ring. Not all of it. We were able to get some of it in the van. It wasn't a huge van, but we have to walk the ring through Copenhagen city centre. Which, this is what happens. I just have this
picture of you walking around in the city with ring pieces.
Like, people don't realize. People think that wrestling's glamorous. It could not be any further from the truth. Like, the things that we have to do to get a show to happen is unreal. So, yeah, we're taking like beams the full length of the ring. I don't know if it was an 18 or 20 foot ring, whatever it was. So there's one on either side of this, just walking through the city, pressing the button at the crossings, waiting for the green man to come on so we can cross traffic and stuff. So you're walking all the way through the city, carrying like the huge boards that go under the canvas, the ring posts, the beams that go under the boards. And, like, this was exhausting. Like, like setting up the rings. It's not terrible, but no, nobody cared. Copenhagen's pretty relaxed like that. So we get the ring there. It takes hours. We get the ring there. They start building the ring, and it's like super early. It's like maybe 12 o'clock, maybe close to 1. Some of the other wrestlers, like my friend Chaos, he'd come down from the other side of the country where he was. People were starting to arrive, and I was like, brilliant. It's like 1 o'clock. The ring's up. Is this an afternoon show? Like, if the ring's already up by now, maybe, we'll show's at 3, we'll be finished at 5 and go have fun at night. And somebody's like, no. The show started, it was crazy late. It's like, show starts at 8 or 9 or something like that. It started super late. And I was like, well, so like, we've got to wait around for 7 hours now. So we all wait, and then something happens with the promoter. The promoter had to leave. So nobody knows what's going on. So, we're not terribly sure of the cards. We're not terribly sure what's expected of the matches. Somebody gives us a talk, gives us like, again, I hate pulling back the curtain, but we have the run through. And some guy tells us what he thinks might happen because the promoter had to go. So we're not really sure, but this is what might be happening. So this is all happening. There's some kids who had just walked in off the street, and because, 7 hours before the show, we've not got security set up yet. So some kids had just walked in, and we're just sitting watching guys training in the ring and practicing spots in the ring and stuff. So, there was quite a few of the kids. They were fairly young. Somebody goes and asks them to leave. They don't want to leave. Bit of a fight breaks out. Somebody gets punched. The police come down. The guys go and get their big brothers, and like people are threatening to cancel the show. And I'm like, geez. Okay, and then like so all this happening. The promoter makes it back. He smooths everything over with the venue. There's no problem. The show gets started. We start the show. The usual things that happen in a show. The projector doesn't work, whatever. Like, things are just things that happen at shows. And then I was due to be the second last match, I think. And before I go on, or maybe like a couple of matches before me, we have the halftime break, and we had a musician, we had a rapper come on who was going to do a song. There'd been some mix-up in communication, and this rapper went for like 45 minutes. Not to mention that this show started super late. So I'm looking through the curtain at the crowd, and like there's kids sleeping, So like, I think I went on for my match. Bear in mind, it's families and there's children and stuff like that. I went out for my match at maybe 20 past 11, half past 11, something like that. So I went out, and okay, I've got all the lasers and the light up jacket and the glasses. So I'm running laps around the crowd, trying to wake up all the kids, trying to see if we can get something like. It's going to be a short match anyway because it's getting so late. But at least wake people up and get them into the show. So we do that, finish the match, get finished. And I'm getting changed. The main event's on, and I think I just got out the shower. The main event had finished. Somebody walks in. He's like, "Right, everybody out." I was like, "What? Everybody out?" And I'm thinking they're throwing us out of the changing room so that they can close that part of the building down. So I quickly throw on some clothes, drag my bag through, and I'm trying to get started on the ring. And like we're getting thrown out by the venue staff. He's like, "No, we finish at 12. You guys need to be out." So what? I was like, yeah. Like, we're not getting paid for this, so we're locking the building. So they locked the building with the ring in the venue. All of the equipment was still in there, and like, funnily enough, we'd managed to get a van that we couldn't find in the morning. So we had the equipment to move everything, but they closed the venue. So I said, all right, okay. So we're all chatting, and a bunch of people are like, yeah, we'll come and get it tomorrow. Don't worry.
Yeah, but it's like I remember you telling me that somebody had the van, but the van was set up for the evening.
Yeah. So they had the van for the evening to take the ring back so that we don't have to walk through the city carrying the ring. But they have the van for the evening, and that guy's like, well, I've got the van for this evening. I can't get it for tomorrow. I'm not available. You're going to have to find another way to transport the ring. So I'm looking at this, and I've been promised, because this is a like late Saturday night, I've been promised Sunday we get to go sightseeing in Copenhagen. So I'm like, cool. I'm staying with one of the guys. I'm going to leave with him, go stay at his house, do some sightseeing on Sunday, and then fly back Sunday evening. Lovely weekend. So I go away, and then nobody explained how far away this guy's house was. Cool guy, Sebastian Day. I think he might be their champion now. I think he was. I don't know if he still is. So we have to get a bus to the train station, and then take a train to somewhere else, and then we've got like a huge long walk to get to his house because it's so late. There's no other transport or whatever, and like it takes us like at least 2 hours to get home. So like we get there, and it's like 4 a.m. by this point, like 3, 4. It's getting late. It's crazy. So I go to sleep, get a couple hours sleep, and I wake up excited to do some sightseeing in Copenhagen. And so I'm having coffee with Sebastian in his living room, and the phone goes, and like his phone starts ringing, and I know instantly what this phone call is. Like we all know what's coming. Nobody's turned up to help with the ring. So it's just the promoter by himself, and he's pretty upset that nobody's come to help out. So he's like, right, you guys are going to have to come here and take the ring down. So we get this massive 2.5 hour long journey all the way back to the venue that we left last night to start working on the ring. So I take the ring down, and like, everybody's like, there's only a couple of us. It ends up I'm the only guy taking down the ring for most of it anyway. So we get the ring down, and I was like, cool, let's get this in the van and get it sorted. Oh, we don't have a van. So now we've got no way of transporting this ring anywhere. So we end up, we're calling round, and like time's running out. I'm starting to realise I might miss my flight. I need to get to the airport. So it ends up we get the ring.
Because you had to fly in Sweden to go back.
Well, no. My flight back was from Copenhagen, which was lucky.
Okay.
If it was in Sweden, I'd have had no chance. So my flight back was from Copenhagen. So we ended up, we had to get, he knew someone that had like a Volkswagen camper van, and this was insane. So we start, first off, it's not set up to to carry a load. It's got chairs and everything in it, you know? It's like, it's set up as a camper van. It's got a kitchen, it's got this and that. So we're just cramming things into this camper van, but it's not long enough to receive the full length of the beams or the board or any of that stuff. So we're all panicking probably I'm the only one panicking because I'm going to miss my flight. So we're like, oh, well, we could take the small things in this, and then we could walk with the others. I'm like, geez, right, let's just get it in. So we end up, we've got half of the ring. We made like 5 or 6 trips through the one-way system in Copenhagen, with the ring hanging out the back of a camper van, and me sitting on top of the beams, the big metal beams, hoping that my body weight on top of it is enough weight to prevent it from sliding out the back of this van. So we did that. We made a bunch of trips. We got the ring dropped off, and the guy in the van managed to drop me at the airport just in time. But like, that was the most work that I had probably done, carrying a ring to a venue and then sitting around the whole day doing nothing. The fights with the kids in the crowd before the show even started, the police coming and trying to close down the show, the rapper who overran in the middle of the show, the crowd being asleep when I went out, the show finished late, the venue kicked us out, we had to go back the next day and do the ring, even though I was supposed to be sightseeing. Like, everything that could go wrong went wrong. But it was still a lot of fun, and now I've got the story. But good people up in Copenhagen. It was like Copenhagen Championship Wrestling, obviously based out of Copenhagen. But I'm not sure if they've had the same sort of technical difficulties at any other show. I certainly hope not. I think that's filled their quota for the rest of the year or so.
I don't think I can get any worse than that. Or actually, yeah, I could.
But it's one of those situations where like things go wrong on show days. That's what happens. And it's all about how you react to it and how you're able to find a way to make things happen in the end.
In 2007, we had a show in Italy with the promotion I was working with those years, and we had a very nice show because the city was paying for it. Was
Lovely.
What's it called? Like when you have the whole city doing an event through the whole night.
Okay.
I don't know. The name in Italian is the White Night.
Okay.
But I don't know if you can translate that. But anyway, we were doing this event, which was a huge event. A lot of people there watching the show, and through the I remember in the morning we were doing setting up the ring, and I've seen one of the ring pole that he has a little bit like it was something like he has been hit somehow.
Okay.
And I told the promoter, I said, that's not good. It's gonna fucked up because that steel, it looks a lot of steel, but it's like a soda tank, what's the Coca-Cola, not tank. What's the name in English? The little bottle.
Yeah, just a little bottle of Coke.
Yeah, but what's the English name of it?
Oh, I don't know.
Like tang? I don't know. Yeah.
Oh, a tin.
Tin.
Like the steel tin. Yeah.
Tin. Okay. And I've seen this pole, and he has something like he has been damaged, and I knew it was going to be like a 10 because as soon you put some pressure on it, it's gonna break. If not break, at least it's gonna like turn, and the promoter said no, it'll be fine. And I told him a couple of times, said no, this is not gonna be fine. No, don't worry. Of course, when we started the show, first match was a guy was over 100 kilos in the ring, and as soon this guy hit the ropes a couple of times, the pole just started banging.
Yeah.
And it was banging very bad, and so all the ropes, they were loose, and the rest of the matches that we had, you had to pretend running the ropes, like you had to go to the rope, stop, and restart running.
Yeah.
Because you could not use the ropes, and that was terrible. And I destroyed half of the backstage. I was freaking out because my trainer, Рафуэго, his wife is from Italy, so they were there. They were there because by coincidence, the parent of her, they kind of live in the area, and so they show up to see the show. And I was, imagine that I was having a show in front of my trainer, and after the first match, everything went to shit.
Yeah.
So that was really bad, and that was, we had two shows to do. The following day, we had the pole fixed by somebody, hopefully, something that we should have done in the first place. And but yeah, there's a lot of crazy thing going on, and but that's wrestling. So Tom, I would like to ask you if it's cool for you to maybe have a second part. Because there's so many stories you've told me that are so crazy. I was certainly one of them on the European Wrestling Podcast. And beside that, I would really like to tell you for sharing your stories, your career, the story of your career. And thank you very much for being at the European Wrestling Podcast. Before leave, I would like to ask you also to let the people know how they can find you, like your Facebook page, Twitter, whatever you use, or website.
Oh man, you put me on the spot here. I kind of still live in the 80s. I still have a tape player, so I'm not good at this stuff.
You are so into your gimmick that you are unreachable via social media. They can only phone call you, or maybe.
Oh no, I don't answer my phone. No, I don't trust the phone.
Telegram. They can only telegram you.
Yeah, Telegram will work. No. On Facebook, you can reach me at, pretty sure it's Future Shock Tom Fulton. So it's facebook.com/Future Shock Tom Fulton. Twitter, I believe it's _Future Shock. But I don't really use Twitter too much. That was part of an agreement with someone else. I start a Twitter page for some free rent, and then I never used it.
Anything else, Instagram or website or
No.
just Facebook?
No, just Facebook. I like to keep it fairly simple.
That's
Yeah, I think everybody. I can probably count on one hand the number of people I know that don't use Facebook. So like, Facebook covers most people, so I stick to Facebook.
Well, by Instagram is going pretty well now. I think to the long period of time, probably Instagram is gonna take over.
That's what I hear, but I like being at least 20 years behind what everyone else is doing. So, when everybody's sick of Instagram, I'll maybe start one up.
Well, thank you again for sharing your stories, and have a great night, and I'll see you. I'll catch you on the road.
Awesome, man. Take care of yourself, buddy. Speak to you soon.
European Wrestling Podcast.
I'm ɪṛᴜᴜ and you can follow me on Twitter at @Luca_Rusconi. You can also follow me on Facebook on my profile ɪṛᴜᴜ or my page, which is Belthazar Pro Wrestling. I'm also on Instagram, of course, and it's always ɪṛᴜᴜ and all the episodes are gonna be online on YouTube and also available on my website, which is belthazar.com. And of course, if you are gonna share this episode, please use the hashtag European Wrestling Podcast. As well, if you have any question, again, hashtag European Wrestling Podcast. Thanks everybody again. I'll see you next week.